marriage works, but it takes a lot of work. Never feel like you have worked and now all you have to do is just ride the waves. I think you'll always keep working at your marriage. The grass is never greener on the other side. You just have to water your own. In terms of parenting, is I think being real, being present. Mistakes do happen, but what happens when the mistake happens? Does the child stop being your child? Get to a space where they can look up to you in terms of whether we are doing good or doing bad. We know we can rely on dad and mom.
Marriage is the only institution where you get the certificate before you have even done the practicum. And so there's a lot of work that is going to be required for you to put into it. Choose to work on yourself and choose to work on your marriage. The other thing when it comes to parenting, there's no experts in parenting. You learn on the job. It's an on the job training. So it's very important that you two sit down and write. Just like in marriage, you've got to sit down and have a strategic plan about what plans do you want to have as far as these human beings you've brought into the world.
Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Dolly Ochola from Kavaya's Daughter Speaks. And today I'm honored to have Donald Otieno and Cynthia Wamboi Otieno. This is a power couple that I have come to love and respect. I knew them separately. I knew Donald more than I knew Cynthia. Cynthia, I just saw her growing up here and there when she would tour, spiritual tourist, and would come to Pente and church that was not too far from Nairobi Pentecostal Church, which is where I went, and she went to Nairobi Baptist Church. And sometimes we would go into each other's churches to, for different youth events. So that's how I saw Cynthia, and that's how I knew her. And I met her briefly in the US when she had come for a wedding in New Jersey. And then, lo and behold, I did not know the guy that I knew for a long time, Donald Otieno, who was a good friend of ours, was eyeing Cynthia. And so they met, they fell in love, and they're a power couple. So I want to introduce them. That's my introduction of them, actually. But I want them to introduce each other. So I'm going to go with the ladies first. So Donald, could you please introduce your beautiful wife, Cynthia, to us?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. I'm pleased to introduce to you Pastor Cynthia Wamboi Otieno, the lover of my life. She's the mother to my children, my two girls, marriage and relationship coach, who is bubbly and full of life.
Okay. Cynthia, would you introduce your handsome husband to us?
Hey. All right, everybody, good morning and welcome to Kavaya's Daughter Speaks. I'd like you to, for a moment, put your hands together for Donald Otieno. He is a marriage and relationship coach, a father to two amazing young women. He is a mentor to many. He mentors boys and men under the Man Code events. He is also a published author for men. The book is The Rewired Man, as well as a co-authored with me a book called When Love Dares. I am privileged to have him as my husband for the last 15 years. We have got another 50 or so to go 50 to 60 before Jesus calls us home.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Otienos, for spending this time with us. So briefly, tell us your story, just how you met and how you connected. A very brief version, and then we'll move on. Who's going?
Ladies first.
Okay, there's a first time that we met, and then there's a time we met. So the
Okay.
first time we met is we get crashed a wedding, and in 1997, but we never really connected. We never. Okay, I can't say we met, but we get crashed a wedding. But in 2006, we both were in an event, a conference in Pennsylvania under the KCFA, Kenya Christian Fellowship in America, and he was leading worship. I was part of the congregation, and I walked up to the man during tea break because I wanted to say hi to him. I made the first move, Dolly, and the
Ooh.
rest is history.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, he said hi, but he at that time he was not available.
Mm-hmm.
He was very much engaged, so we never talked after that. But
Mm-hmm.
2 years later, we reconnected and we were able to start talking. That's how we met.
Okay. Dawn, did you see the light when you saw Cynthia the first time?
I think it was just the forwardness, the boldness that she had, but I think most of all was the conversations we had uh, around the ministry corridors,
Mm-hmm.
just about what she's doing and what's going on in their church and in what she's doing in ministry. At that time, I was also sharing a lot about what's happening in KCFA and New Jersey chapter, and also in the church and what I was doing. So I
Okay.
think that connection was big by then at that point.
Mm-hmm. So when did the scales fall off your eyes? Because you had scales at one point. When did they fall off? And then you saw, ta-da! This is the woman. When did those scales fall off?
I guess after was it the ordination or something? That's when I think after we had stayed and spent almost the day. It was 2 days actually.
Mm.
I had gone for the ordination and then I was flying out the following day. I think no, driving out. Then as I was leaving is when I realized, wow, this conversation should be lifelong, not just for a few minutes.
Oh man.
Yeah, because I did read your book, and so you guys drove. You spoke pretty much the whole entire
Yeah.
drive, right?
Yeah.
Which was how many hours was that?
9 hours.
9 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I
Wow.
had something to say.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I mean, for those 9 hours, I kept talking. I didn't want him off the phone. So we
Oh.
just kept talking about everything, even about the grass that was growing on my backyard.
Okay, good, good. But I'm happy that that conversation led to, you being Mr. and Mrs. Otieno. And so
Yes.
now you get married. Cynthia comes in with her bubbly self, as Donald introduced you, and Donald is a little bit reserved. So can you guys tell me some of the challenges you faced? Cynthia, tell
Okay.
me. What,
Okay.
so Donald, you get into marriage. You guys had never lived together, so this was the first time you're living together, and you're like, "Oh, this
Mm.
is Prince Charming," and then boom, reality hits. So what was it like when reality hit?
You see, when two people haven't lived together, it is pretty mysterious, because for me, I was so intrigued by this quiet guy. Remember, I'm a bubbly. I can fill up the room with my bubbliness, so I'm thinking that by the time he's done with my sunny side, he will be as sunny as me. So
Mm,
I got into the marriage with the thought that, you know how the Bible says, "For the plans that I have for you is to prosper you, to give you a future and a hope."
mm-hmm.
Okay. For
Yeah.
I, the Lord, know the plans that I have for you.
Yes.
So I knew that I'm partnering with God for the plans that I have for Dawn. So my plan was that, God, this man is quiet. There's a way he can talk in Jesus' name. He
Mm,
has the ability to be as engaging as me. And so when I realized that the guy even loves me time, he loves his time. He has protected it with his life. And then there were times that he would just be quiet for no reason. Are you okay? I'd be saying, "Are you okay, Dawn? Ama, it's me who has offended you."
mm,
So the first couple of weeks, I would wonder, guy, are we ever going to talk? You
mm,
know, I'm walking around wondering, am I walking on eggshells?
mm-hmm.
And so the first couple of months was very interesting, because I remember my mom whispering to me,
Mm,
and I don't know if you remember this, Don. My mom told me,
mm,
"Haya," in Kikuyu, "Haya,
mm,
oyo ni aragia,"
mm,
as in, does this one ever talk? As in she was like, but because my mom is as talkative as me, so she's
Yeah.
wondering, guy, how are we going to manage our boy? This one doesn't talk. But later on, I mean, for me, I realized um, that his personality was different. I'm glad that Dawn and I got into a class, a
Mm,
premarital class before we got married that helped us understand our temperaments.
mm,
If I didn't understand what my temperament was, but now I'm seeing it in full picture, I would probably have been very, very devastated because I was thinking, I'm here to change you.
mm,
My plan is to change you to become like me, but Dawn was very much Dawn.
mhm.
Maybe don't tell us what did you think about this noisy girl?
Um, just like you, I think right from the beginning, it's a good thing because that's not what you're used to, so it's different. Growing up, I think us in our family, majority of us are very chilled out. A normal Sunday or family meeting is very quiet, unless you tell guys, okay, here, look here, I'm speaking.
Mm,
Everyone is just chill, keep to themselves, and that I grew up basically like that. So here's this person who's bubbly and all over the place, loud, and it was different. Let me say it was different. So
Good
it
choice
wasn't
of words.
it wasn't different in an ugly way, but
mhm,
it was different. Like, "Oh, this is something new. Let me look. Let me watch."
mhm, mhm,
It was different. So I don't think it was in a bad way. But then of course now as you continue to live, you now start realizing, okay, there are those times I have to tell her, hey, chill, chill, let's
mm,
listen here.
mhm,
you know, or okay, let them run this show, then we
mm,
will give them feedback later,
mhm.
and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Donald, now that you had a bubbly wife, I can imagine maybe you being overwhelmed, like this is too much, at one point. And then Cynthia thinking like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And then maybe the more she's asking you, have I done anything? You're like, no, like, why can't you just leave me alone in my bubble? Did you find yourself struggling to communicate? That you just wanted to be left alone, not because you had done anything wrong, but because that is just how you recharge your battery, right? Did you
Yes.
find it hard to communicate that? Did you struggle?
Not from what I remember. I think I told her, and
Mm,
I think I told her that, imagine there's nothing wrong. I just like this space, because I remember one time even telling, even after work or even after coming out of the world, being out there, when I got home, I used to like to just go up to the room and just chill. Just a few minutes of just being quiet alone,
mhm.
and lo and behold, Cynthia would grab the kids and they would all run upstairs to come to the room. You know?
One big happy picnic.
Yes. So I got to tell her, hey, by the I just need a few minutes and then I calm down. I can come back to you guys.
Mhm,
And there are those times where now you just say, okay, just take a walk. I take a walk out and leave them, just get my recharge and I come back to them.
mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, and so Cynthia, what was difficult for you in terms of, okay, we know that you're bubbly and Donald is a little bit reserved, but what other issues did you guys struggle with? Because if you've never lived with somebody and you start living with them, it's different than having a roommate, a girlfriend who is your roommate, because you speak the same language, sort of, but then men speak a slightly different language and women speak a different language. And that's the beauty of marriage, that we are different and we come together. It would be so boring if Donald was exactly like Cynthia or Cynthia was exactly like Donald. What other challenges
Mm.
did you guys face?
I think one of the other challenges that we faced as a couple is
Mm-hmm,
the fact that in conflict resolution,
mm-hmm,
um, when I see a problem, I want it solved right there and then. I mean, because for me, it's out of sight, out of mind. If I don't say it right here and then, I will have forgotten it tomorrow.
mm-hmm,
And I'm passionate, I'm a motivational speaker at that point. When that thing is happening, I want it resolved. Let's get it done with. Then kumbaya, we hug and make up. Don, for him, he's a processor. He would process whatever is happening. So for example, if an issue has happened, he won't say it right there and then. He will sit with it for maybe 3 4 days, 5 6. That
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
mi nilisahau zamani za kale and I've moved on to another scene.
Yeah.
I have already offended him 5 times over and he's still simmering with the first one.
Yeah.
So what would happen is that when he starts to remind me, oh, by the way, remember on Friday, the 26th. Okay, which Friday, the 26th? You did, oh, really? I can't even remember. Even the feeling of remorse is not there anymore because you just moved on. And so I would find Don is stuck with that issue, and me, I'm ready to move, play kumbaya.
Mhm.
So that would even offend him even more.
Oh, exactly.
And
Yeah.
it he
How
would
dare you?
he would it would just kill him. So we realized, and painfully, I think we stepped on each other's toes, especially in the very early years of our marriage, is that we realized that, you know what, he's a processor. He's that computer that is loading, crashes, loading, processing. And mine, mine is the one that immediately I fix it, I move on. So we realized that I can't have everything done in my time. Whereas Dawn also will need to also quicken the processor. And so we decided to come up with a median that helps both Dawn and myself resolve our conflict, because it's easy for us to have a lot of conflict that is building up somewhere. So that's one that I remember that we were very passionate about, because Dawn used to do something very interesting, Dolly.
Mm-hmm.
On a Sunday morning, just before we went to church,
Mm-hmm.
he would sit up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm busy making eggs and bacon, and he says, "Oh, come upstairs, Cynthia. We need to talk." Guy, when you hear we need to talk, unajua dhambi zako ni mingi. So now, anyway, we sit down, and he says we need to talk, and he will now lay it down on the table before we go to church. So, don't you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why Sunday, Donald? I'm curious. Why Sunday before, so that you can go and so that you can go and repent her sins when she goes.
No.
Yeah.
I guess for some reason it just happened on
Mm.
on Sunday 1 or 2 times. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a planned schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. And Donald, for you, what was one of your other struggles?
One.
Yeah, I know there are many. Okay, tell me. Tell me. No, we're talking. See, because I just want people to know that you guys have worked hard on your marriage to get to where you are, where you can even laugh about it, right? Because there's people
Yeah.
that will not make them laugh. They would get even more angry talking about that now, because they haven't
Right.
worked on their issues. What were the challenges you faced with your beautiful wife, Cynthia? That made you say, even if she's beautiful, Apana, this one I can't take.
Yeah. I guess there was once just after, was it after our first child, or it's when I realized, Allah, this lady of mine is just. I grew up with a mom who was super tidy and wow, very clean. So even with the helps in the kitchen, I remember early in our marriage, I asked Cynthia, "Hey, what's going on with the sink?" Because how she was more of doing dishes in the morning.
A
She
piler. She
loved,
would pile the dishes.
she loved doing them in the morning,
Yeah.
and I was coming from a background where, hey, dinner is done before guys go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, the house is cleaned like as if it's morning.
Yes.
The sofa seats are set back proper, the kitchen uh, clean, everything. And I tell you, Dolly, it was not wash the dishes and leave them to dry. It
Wash the
was
dishes.
wash and dry them using the cloth and store them away. As in, you leave the kitchen with nothing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, kind
Yeah.
of a thing. So there was one time in the beginning, she was like, just piling them there in the morning. Then she's like, Kwani, see, I'll wash them.
I know.
Yeah, that was kind of like, I really. So we leave these things here like this. They have food on them until morning. I wasn't seeing how that was going to work. You know.
Eh, eh, Now, Dolly, let me tell you what would happen.
Yes.
Dolly, let
Yeah.
me tell you what would happen. My lovely husband
Mm,
is saying it like a guy.
mm-hmm.
He's telling the story like a guy.
Mm-hmm.
He would put a nice movie. We
Mm-hmm.
cozy up to each other as we're watching the movie.
Yeah.
Unaona hiyo picha, Dolly?
Yes.
So we're cozying up and we are in a moment.
Uh-huh.
Those dishes had better wash themselves.
Exactly. Like, would you
Because
expect
it's a
somebody to
moment that has been created by this husband.
Yes.
So things will happen. This is PG-13. So by the time things have happened, hey, dishes, they can go wash themselves.
I
So
agree. I agree. Who goes after causing up? Who wants to wash dishes? The dishes can wait, right?
so one day he sat me down and he told me, you know what, honey? One of my biggest highlights is a clean kitchen. I'm
Mm.
thinking, but I've been causing up to you every evening. He says, yes, cozy after.
Ah, yeah. So wash the dishes first, and then cozy. Okay.
Ay.
Yeah. Okay. So those were some of the challenges, but you see, they're small things, but this can bring big
Yeah.
problems. So now communication. How was it communicating? Especially coming from a very reserved culture, and then coming from a place where we are told to kuachia Mungu, meaning leave it to God. Like we don't express our feelings, and we were not even taught how to talk about our feelings. And that's why for some of us, when our children come to us with their feelings, we're like, hey, we don't know what to do. Maybe we get angry, not because we are really angry, but we are ill-equipped to deal with feelings and thoughts. And to make matters worse, our languages are very limited when it comes to feelings. So for example, angry. In the English language, there's disappointed, then there's annoyed, then there's frustrated, like little angers that that build up to angry. And so you find that when you don't have the language, you're always saying, I'm angry, but you're really not angry. Maybe you're just frustrated, or maybe you're just annoyed. But our languages don't have the vocabulary. So how was it to communicate your feelings in a way that you've never communicated before? Because now this is your husband, and you had better lay it down, because if you don't, then there's nobody else who can you can talk to freely. So how was that for you, Cynthia? And also, after Cynthia is done, for you, Donald, especially being a man and in a culture where you're supposed to be tough. You're not supposed to show your feelings. You're not supposed to cry. How was that for you?
I have never struggled speaking about my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember not being able to speak up my feelings. I think women being so emotionally connected, they will be able to speak their feelings, even if it's going to come out in sounds or in our language, or
Mm-hmm.
even there's a way you can say, that's already a communication by itself. I think that's how we communicate, even though words are not there.
Mm-hmm.
We tend as Africans to be able to express ourselves with in some shape or form where words are missing. So I feel that where feelings are concerned in terms of frustration, in terms of anger, in terms, I tend to find that I have something to say.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe what I would say is that sometimes I felt too many things at the same time that I needed to whosa and really identify which of all those many feelings is my true feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can sit down and evaluate and say, oh, was that really hunger or was that thirst? But it's camouflaging itself as hunger. But really, all I needed to do is have 2 glasses of water. You understand? So I think what I have learned in relationship, instead of responding every time to everything that is around me, is to pull back and evaluate what am I truly feeling at this very moment and why.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what I have been able to respond to in my relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Over
And
to you, Deb.
how difficult was it for you to do that, especially because you are a fixer, like you're the person who wanted things done immediately? How difficult was it for you to adjust and take the time and not do things immediately, but process the things, pretty much learn what Donald had been doing
I
with.
think it took a lot of failing. It
Mm-hmm.
took a lot of failing and falling flat on my face, because when you are sometimes quick to respond to things, you find that you will respond with the wrong thing. You will say what was not supposed to be said, instead of pulling back and actually evaluating what is he really saying. When he said what he said, what is he really saying? Is that what I had? Do I need to first clarify, or do I respond just because something was said? So of course I fell flat on my face many times, and I learned to I actually learned from Dawn to actually evaluate things. I've found that learning from Dawn not to respond and actually first hear
Mm-hmm.
and understand rather than talk, because big talking can take place anytime, anywhere. I sit in a matatu and I will actually start talking to anyone who will listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned from Dawn that, you know what, just keep quiet, observe first, hear what has not been said in the room before you say it, and that has really helped.
Mm-hmm. Donald, what were the challenges for you communication wise? Being reserved. Now you have to open up to this woman who is living with you, who has no hesitation to tell you about her feelings. And maybe she also wants to know your feelings, right? So how was that for you?
I think the challenge was the second part, where
Mm-hmm.
she would want to know my feelings. Apparently, for me, being an introvert, being a phlegmatic, melancholy, my personality, I tend to not want to cause a stir.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to bring trouble. I'm the trouble solver. I'm the Kofi Annan, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So usually, even when I am offended,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm not quick to bring it up and say, "Hey, this is wrong. This is the way I'm feeling," because that's a star by itself.
Mm-hmm.
So what tended to happen a lot is I keep things a lot inside and not saying them. But now, of course, now these are what led to the Sunday morning talks. By the time the talk is happening, it was not about whatever happened last night
Mm-hmm.
or yesterday, but
Mm.
whatever happened yesterday or last night added to what has been in the archives.
Mm-hmm.
So that now kind of filled the pot beyond. Now it's overflowing. That's when I had to talk.
Mm-hmm.
So I think communication now has grown to a space where we got to learn how to talk now to each other. I think for me, I got to that space where, as you were mentioning, where a lot of men are not supposed to show their emotions and stuff like that. I came to overgrow that and get to a space where I understand that if Cynthia does not understand how I'm feeling, then her responses will always be wrong from what I
Mm-hmm.
expect.
Mhm.
So getting to know that I am angry, and I give context to why I'm angry. I'm angry because you did ABCD or XYZ happened to me at the shopping center or whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
think her response will always be now coming from an informed space
Mm-hmm.
where it is now understood. And then the same goes even to the girls, to my children, my daughters,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that dad is excited because of
Mm-hmm.
ABCD. Now we can all jump up and run around and jump on daddy because we know he's excited. But when I sit and put myself in a corner because I lost my business somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
family and my wife get to a space where they don't know. So I think expressing your emotions, expressing how you feel, communicating, whatever space that you are in, became an important thing that really changed a lot for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the one I can pick up as was a danger, because my wife always kept asking, "Are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong? Are you sick?"
Mm-hmm.
She kept asking that, but truthfully speaking, there was nothing wrong. I was
Mhm.
actually in a space where I'm actually, in fact, very comfortable. Whenever I was quite like that, I was in my space. I was like in heaven,
Mhm.
but they couldn't understand how.
Yeah.
you know.
Have you watched Mark Ganga with the Luck Your Way to a Better Marriage? So you are in
Yes,
your nothing box,
yes,
Yes.
and she could not understand. Like, what do you mean you're thinking about nothing? You're okay.
right.
Yeah, I get that. So now you get married, and then now you have children, right? And that also comes with its own issues. What were the challenges that you faced with parenting?
Myself or Cynthia goes.
But any of you. And then I also remember this story in your book where Donald was almost like chastised for being too involved with the baby, right? Like some men sat him down. I'd like you guys to tell us that story. So, but what were your challenges,
All
Cynthia?
right,
Oh,
Cynthia
Donald,
go.
you go. Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Okay, Cynthia go. Go
Okay.
first.
I think Don has a fun story that he's going to share.
Okay.
But I think our parenting, having lived in the US for a very long time, we
Hmm.
had seen what we wanted to see in parenting.
Okay.
And we got married when we were over 35. So we were also very sure about who we are and who we are not. We were very sure about that. We did not need to consult with somebody else to
Hmm.
determine who we were and who we wanted to become. So
Okay.
one of the things that really stuck out to us first, we wanted to be parents and we were looking forward to becoming parents. So the first thing we did when we were pregnant is we signed up for a parenting class that was being done by the Anzeas. Um, they are parenting coaches or gurus here in Kenya. They are fantastic in teaching about parenting. So we signed up for the class because we really wanted other people who have been successful parents to mentor us and to coach us about that. So
Mhm.
we thank God for going through the class. Now, what we didn't know after going through the class is that once you become a parent, is that you totally believe you are God's solution to that child. And so you become very protective over your own child, even against your own spouse. And
Mm,
especially if you're the mother, you think, I carried this child for 9 months. And as soon as you breastfed the child, Dawn picks up the child and starts throwing the child up in the air, and the child throws up. So you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, this guy is trying to kill my child. So we would have that kind of conflict where I feel that Dawn does not seem to know or have the mother instinct. So
mhm,
our conflict came more from instinct, where I would feel that don't do that. Imagine we are sitting side by side. I'll tell him, hold the baby like this, do like this. And one day he
mm,
sat me down and told me, do you realize,
mm,
Cynthia, that
mm,
I am as much a parent as you are?
mhm,
And there's nothing I'm going to do to this child that would cause this child to any harm.
mhm,
And it was such a sobering conversation
mhm,
because we needed to have that conversation, because I was always saying, don't do this. Oh, atatapika. Oh, akona temperature. Oh, anafanya hivi. And I realized, oh my goodness, it is my insecurities and my fears that I'm speaking out. And
mhm,
so it was really nice for me to get the affirmation from Dawn that, you know what, we are both parents. And imagine we would both be in a lot of pain if something happens to the child.
mhm.
Mm.
And Donald, what was your experience?
I think for me, growing up, the love of kids has always been my thing. I love children. Yeah. I love children. Just being around them, and it was an easy process. So
Mm,
for me, right from start, you can imagine that I know that I'm going to be a father. So the excitement is already there right from start. So, and of course, now by the time the child comes, there's mommy who's there, and they are bonded 24/7, always with mommy, always breastfeeding, always being rocked, always. So I kind of fought my way. I had to
mhm,
find a space where yeah, no,
mhm,
no, no. I have to find my space also. I want to be around this child of mine.
mhm,
So That's how I demanded to take the bath time. I used to wash the girls when they were little.
Mm-hmm.
I demanded that should be my time,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, and I took it just to be part of it, and also find my time to play around with them and laugh, And I think now that after that stage, now there was the stage of disciplining also,
Mm-hmm.
you know that disciplining also came where I turned out to be the very strict one, not letting things go by. So many times I know we would fight over, okay, why did you let that go? You should have handled it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let it go like that, so that the child can learn. Don't make sure there's repercussion for the things we've talked
Yeah.
about.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let it go, and yeah. So those were also there. To answer you about the time growing up, I mean, like I mentioned, when we were like, I was so excited about fatherhood, and we happened to be going to a certain church where the Cynthia was working, you know. So on Sunday, you can expect, if we had help, the help has gone off, and us. So who's left? Cynthia is at work, and me, I am here with my two girls, and I couldn't go with them into the main service, so I used to sit in the creche. But apparently, by the time we were going to that church,
Mm-hmm.
the kids' creche, the kids' play area or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you- we by the time we were going to that church, it would happen that by that point it was a routine that was the mom's space. All the men would come, even those who have little kids, they would come with the mommy and the baby's bag, drop off the mom and the kid there, and walk to the church and pick them up later. But for me, it was the opposite. Now my wife is the one working, so I demanded to go in there. I remember there was a time I was the only dad in there with my milk bottle, and breastfeeding moms are all around the place. I would change the diapers and all that. So apparently one of the pastors came and told me, "Hey, Don, this is not right." No, actually, they called Cynthia. They didn't even
Called
tell me.
me. Yeah.
They called Cynthia and said, "Whoa, Don might not tell you this, but as a man, I know he doesn't like it, and this looks very bad culturally."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really upset me, because me, I was like, in fact, if anything, I'm getting my bonding time now. When Ash is at
Mm-hmm.
work, I
Mm-hmm.
actually have these kids for 2 hours here on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was a nice space that I enjoyed. So it was a good thing for me. And and
How did
and
you
that
handle
came
that?
sorry?
How did you handle that when a pastor comes and tells you you're doing the wrong thing culturally?
The fact that I was hearing it from my wife, because he didn't tell me directly.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I was hearing it from my wife, I got so angry, I got so
Mm-hmm.
annoyed. It's like I was not doing something wrong to someone's child, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, I got so angry. I remember asking Cynthia, "Can I come to the job at the next day and just tell this person to tell me what I was doing wrong and all?" And Cynthia was not willing to.
Yeah, because it's her job too.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, so those are some of the challenges. I remember, your love for children when we had Danielle. I don't know if you remember, we used to call you Uncle Twin Towers because the Twin
yes,
Towers were tall. And Donald
yes,
would pick Danielle up like she was up there. So we used to call, there's even a card you wrote for Danielle and you drew the Twin Towers
yeah,
as a signature, so I do remember you
Yeah.
wishing to have a junior, like a little. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now moving forward, now you've had children. Can you tell me a little bit about projecting your fears on your children? Because that's what we tend to do. So for example, um, let me just give a small example. When we were growing up, we were told not to put on uh, nail polish, for example, right?
Mm.
Because nail polish, especially certain colors, were for certain professions, right? When you look, yeah, but when you look at the behind that was just a fear that if your
Yeah.
child puts on the nail polish, maybe they might attract attention. Like the fear was there, and that is what motivated us to kind of give these extreme narratives to dissuade our children from doing something that was so simple. And I know that for me, for example, that is something that I struggled with. My daughter
Yeah.
wanted to paint her nails like in kindergarten, and I'm like, no, you're not. I'm like, oh no, and I was fighting wars that to me are not worth fighting. It was like a non-issue. And I just realized one day that, you know what is the real reason I'm saying no to my child? There was really no reason other than the
Yeah.
fear that was instilled in me. So how did you guys handle projecting your fears, and did you even notice that you projected your fears on your children?
Hmm. I think I'm guilty as charged because I projected some of my fears to my children
Mm-hmm.
and didn't realize it until I realized that my youngest child has has separation anxiety
Mm.
because I always um, I say things that the way you let me give you an example. Don't go outside the gate because you will be kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
There was a season in Kenya, there was quite a bit of kidnappings of children. So when they went to play outside, I would stalk my kids. I would keep, so when she would look back, she would know that I'm there. And I would say, no, 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 don't go this place, don't go there, you will be kidnapped. This is what is going to happen. And I kept repeating that narrative for such a long time, not
Mm.
realizing that my youngest now started being afraid of going outside. For me, I was thinking that I'm protecting my child, but it was my fear of
Mm-hmm.
what would happen to me. I remember as a children's pastor in a city church, there's a kid that was kidnapped under my watch as the children's pastor. That traumatized me.
Mm.
That really traumatized me. And so I projected that traumatic experience to my own child. So every time I would almost get into hyperventilation experience if I come home and I find that my child went out to play on the playground. And so we started to have a conversation. I think it's Dawn who told me that, do you realize that you're projecting your fear and your insecurity to this child? And though we haven't yet overcome it completely because she's still very, we went away for the weekend this weekend, and she called us every couple of minutes to find out how we are. Are we okay? She kept telling us how much she loves us and how she doesn't like the fact that we are not home. Our firstborn daughter could care less if we were gone for a year. I mean, she is so secure. And so I realized that those are some of the things we do as parents and can do without even knowing that this is something that we are doing to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Donald, are there any fears that you think you projected on your children?
I guess there's not necessarily negative,
Mm-hmm.
but there's the emphasis on school
Mm.
and trying my best to even just to explain. There are some of the elements I've tried to incorporate from my own dad, that our award system for passing papers, a certain grade, and things like those. But
Mm-hmm.
I think what I've been trying to be more careful about is even the reprimands, now that they are a bit grown, the
Mm.
reprimands, and not being that I struggle with the balance of letting them learn
Mm-hmm.
and not trying to rescue every situation,
Mm-hmm.
because I think being there for every situation, you're the one who wants to rescue. Oh, you didn't do your homework. I'm coming to school. Who's this teacher? Why? Things like those. I want them to take responsibility for some of the things that they've done. So with that, I don't say just leave them out there, but I think I try my best to cover most of the things that I know would happen or could happen in their lives, especially in this stage, and then try and have them hear from me first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the fact that they've had from us as the parents, you know, this could happen, this could happen. By the time it's happening, they have a reference point. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's something to compare with, rather than just coming back and telling us this happened and we had never spoken about it or never told them about it. So that's the thing I can add on.
Now, talking about children and bringing them up, um, I don't know about you guys, but I do know that the talks that I had growing up about with my parents, rather, especially my mother, about sex were not really talks. It was more that men are bad, like keep away from men, right?
Mm.
And I don't know what the men were told, but I know that what I was told as a girl. How have you guys navigated, and do you talk to your children openly about tough topics like sex?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think the very first we started doing the sex education talk
Mm-hmm.
um, as soon I think by the time our daughter was basically, you know, you start with the self-awareness talk when they're 3 and 4, that
Mm-hmm.
this is my body, don't allow anybody to touch your body here,
Mm-hmm.
and you know where the bathing suit would
Mm-hmm.
fit is where you do not let anybody touch without permission.
Mm-hmm.
When we would shower them, we would tell them what are the real names for
Mm-hmm.
the different body parts, so that then they are not shameful names. I think growing up we were told this is called susu, this is called, but you know it has a name. And
Yeah.
then we moved on a bit when they were, I think, 8 or 9. We did have now the sex talk, and we called it a family conversation, and only family talk about it. And we went ahead and now gave them the true conversation. I think they were 8, 9, or 10. They were preteens, and now we have very open conversations, especially when, you know, the girls have started, you know, getting into their menses and all. I
Mm-hmm.
love the fact that we can talk openly. We It's important that they do open up, and that they know that we are the first line of you know, truth in terms of information, in terms of conversation. That is very important to us and
Mm-hmm.
to them. Yeah.
So I remember my after I had Danielle when she was in daycare, and she was able to to bathe herself. No, she needed help still. And I had a very close friend, and she was Italian American. She was born and raised here in the US. And we were such good friends, and our kids went to the same daycare. And sometimes, because of the distance we drove, we picked each other's kids, so that you don't get charged the after 6 p.m. charges. And then whoever picked the kids, if like I didn't make it by 6 p.m., she would take my kids, and then she would go with them to her house, and she would let them take a shower and whatever. And I did the same for her. And I remember one day I walk into her house, and she's instructing my daughter to clean herself, and she used the word vagina. I wanted to fall. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because and she was like, what's the big deal? She's like, yeah, Dolly, like, and I'm like, no. I'm like, what? And she's like, we call things the way they are. And I was like, really, really, this, I think she was about maybe 4-ish. I was really like taken aback. I'm like, what is this woman telling my child? And from that time, she sat me down and pretty much told me, listen, you gotta know what to say to your children, and you can't do more. You need to educate your
Yeah.
children. But that was a shocker for me, because I was not brought up saying stuff like that.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so now moving on, you guys are now marriage coaches, right?
Yes.
Can you tell a little
Mm.
bit about the program that you run for marriages? Dawn,
All
you
right.
can.
Okay, Don, please go ahead, Don.
All right, we do a lot of premarital counseling
Mhm,
for those looking forward to getting married. We do post marital coaching,
mhm,
counseling also. Those who are already married and going through stage difficulty in their marriage.
Mhm.
Separately, we do. Cynthia has a 12-week program for women, just getting them to understand their purpose and teaching them how to grow and glow as women on their
Mhm.
own.
Mhm.
I also have man code events. Mine is not a program or a 10-week program or 12, but I tend to try and engage men to do life together.
Mhm.
We just walk the journey, but we usually have events and allow men, create a space for men to just come and be, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
But usually, most of the time, we have a topic of discussion or something that can build us up as men. Other
Mhm.
than that, we usually have game nights so that we are not just about um, couples when in trouble, but what about when you're not in trouble? We
Mhm.
can keep going. You know, the game nights. We have couples boot camps where you just get to equip your marriage. Um, we have a Valentine's couples dinner that we usually hold. You know, just trying to have spaces where couples can also be built, not
Mhm.
necessarily when you are in a bad space.
Okay.
Mm.
So, what are the
Yeah.
challenges you guys face as marriage coaches? What are you seeing? What are the patterns you're seeing in marriages?
Okay. There's some, we are seeing that marriages, one of the things that we see is that marriages are, many people want to get married or stay in a come we stay relationship, but not solemnize it. And so it's important that we are teaching and equipping that it's important for you to go through the rites of passage. And one of those rite of passages, you will get married either customarily, where you will officially go to your parents and the community and file for you to be married officially. The other thing that we're also noticing is that when it comes to family, in-laws, there's quite a bit of engagement, negative engagement when it comes to
Mhm.
family that
Mhm.
can affect relationships. We're seeing that quite a bit, where families get very much involved in negatively in how they do money, in how the family is making choices in terms of
Mhm.
how, where they stay, who they stay with, how they bring up their children, and that can have a negative impact. The
Lack of,
number three thing that is, huh?
right? Lack of
I'm
boundaries.
sorry.
Lack
Lack
of
of
boundaries.
boundaries.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Definitely,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. And then number three is we've seen where money is an issue, either too much of it that affects how we handle money, or too little of it that then affects in terms of our well-being. So those are some of the three things that we have noticed that are affecting marriages in the city today. And I'm saying that in mostly in Kenya today. Those are some of the issues that we have taken into account.
Okay, you talked about one of the challenges you're having is in-laws not having boundaries and also people interfering with how you raise your children, how you spend your finances, where you live. And I do know that finances are a big issue in most marriages. Did you guys ever have any struggles in terms of how you handle your finances? In most couples, there's one person who is always the spender, and then there's the one who is frugal. Did you guys have those challenges, and how did you handle those challenges to come to harmony?
Dawn.
I guess our situation was different for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard to tell who is the spender and who's the saver,
Ah,
because there was nothing to spend and nothing to save.
okay.
uh, but of course, as we continue to grow,
Mhm,
I think being a melancholy,
mhm,
I usually want to be a planner. I want to put the things in order, things to kind of, have a flow of things. And my dear wife is happy-go-lucky.
Mhm.
Hey, it's here. What else?
Mhm.
Kind of a person. But I'm glad that we have not actually really fought about that, but actually talked about it. It hasn't gotten us to a space where it's actually a fight over finances, but many times it's how to spend, on what we will spend, and when we will spend. And many times I don't think we are in disagreement about that. I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
where issues could come is now on when it is there.
Mhm.
Now where is it going?
Mhm.
The priorities. Yeah.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm.
I,
Okay.
I think one of the things that really helped us is we did the premarital class that we did was very precise in teaching about the oneness of money and how
Mhm.
it's important for us, and even what we teach, because we had better practice what we are teaching,
Mhm.
where we are saying, is your money married? Is your
Mhm.
money actually married? Because many couples are married, but their money is not married. So it's important for us to be able to practice that. Is in what areas our should we allow have we allowed all aspects of our money to be married, so that then we're not living separate lives. And
Mhm.
so that we inculcated very early in our marriage, and we thank God for that, so that even when we have issues of
Mhm.
even prioritizing money, we are very clear it's our money. It's not
Mm.
at his money or her money, it's
Mhm.
our money. And so it's very easy for us to be able to make business decisions or family decisions because it's ours. It's all
Mhm.
ours, Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now, what have your successes been?
Our successes.
In your coaching?
Okay. Oh man, we've had such wonderful success stories. And with coaching, sometimes when we have people in a lot of pain, a success is the fact that this week has been a good week. So we don't quantify success because of how many people have finished the course and are happy, because
Mhm.
I feel that marriage is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
So for us, have we equipped our couples with the right tools and skills that even when they leave our shop per se, can they
Mhm.
be able to take those skills and tools and be able to work them out on their own? So we've had tremendous success stories
Mhm.
of people that we are currently working with and have worked with, and
Mhm.
they have had
Mhm.
the experience of saying that, what, I came into this coaching session not able to communicate, my voice was not there. Now I
Mhm.
can speak up I can speak up, and I can be able to speak my heart or my mind. That for me is a win.
Okay, so now you have your programs and you have events. So if I approach you and I tell you, hey, Cynthia or Dawn, I need help in my marriage, um, other than the events, can you give me like a summary of how your program works for a couple who wants you to do like the one-on-one sessions? Do you do one-on-one sessions? Do you do groups? Or how do you work this out?
Excellent question.
Mhm.
Now, we have what we call a discovery session for us to understand what is your need. So the very first session we will have with you as a couple
Mhm.
is a discovery session where we sit down with you, we get to understand either via Zoom, because we have diaspora clients,
Mhm.
or in person, a physical class. And so that first session helps us understand the scope of what is required of us. Are we actually the right fit? Because we also recognize that we may not be the right fit for what you're looking for. So we allow ourselves to discern the conversation, the scope of what is going on in your relationship or in your marriage, and we give you feedback. From then on, you enter into our 10-week program. The first 5 weeks is we will go through different sessions, different scenarios that help us understand or help you understand what the scope of what is going on. On the fifth session, we evaluate and see, is this working? What are the things that we need to add to or remove? By the time we get to the 10th session, you're pretty much within the majority of our couples by the 10th week are ready to take on life. Now, after the 10 weeks, we meet once a month as per, it's not a must, but we have clients who say, you know what, we want to walk alongside you. Now you enter mentorship with us. So we will meet you once a month for a cup of coffee and we get to hear, what are you doing well? What are some things that have really worked? What is not working? How can we coach you differently? And so we've had that and continuously do that. Now, then there are forums, like Dawn said, forums where we will invite you to come for couples boot camps, couple game nights that will help continue to equip you, continue to hang alongside value-based couples that believe in the things that you believe and want to grow. So that's what we do. So this happens as a group session and some individualized sessions, because we also know that couples are pretty unique and their issues are very unique to their experiences.
Okay, nice,
Yeah.
nice. Okay. Does that mean that Dawn and Cynthia are perfect? Would you guys think it's working? Because I'm thinking, hey, you know what? These guys have coached so many couples; they must have it all together.
Ooh, not
Not
at
at
all.
all. Not at
Why?
all.
We are the most imperfect couple. As in, I feel like we should say, no perfect couples required. No perfect, yeah. I mean, look at us. We come from such diverse backgrounds. We come from such, I mean, I was wounded. I mean, we are so imperfect, but God is a perfect God that allowed these two people to come together. And if we can just rely on that perfect God, then we can walk a journey together into what God requires of us. I'm sure Don wants to say something.
No, I agree, and I think we are not perfect, but we sit at a space where we learn a lot too. I think every time a couple walks into our space,
Yeah.
the issues they bring only alerts us on how imperfect we are and how we need
Yes.
to improve or need to take care of certain issues. So I think we are there, and there's no one who's ever gets to a
Yeah.
space where they are perfect, because you'll keep learning and you keep growing. So yeah.
And I think that's why your program works very well, is because you guys relate. You're not coming in. Yes, you're the ones who have the experience, but you're not coming in as the perfect couple, but you're coming
Gurus.
and yes, you're coming in with your experiences and also sharing your experiences and talking about how the mistakes you've made and how you've corrected those mistakes and what journey you're still on as a married couple.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Now we are coming to an end. What would you like to leave as a piece of advice for the viewers? I'll start with Dawn and then I'll end with Cynthia.
First, for marriage, I always say marriage works, but it takes a lot of work. Never feel like you have worked and now all you have to do is just ride the waves. I think you'll always keep working at your marriage, and the grass is never greener on the other side. You just have to water your own. In terms of parenting, is I think being real, being present. Um, Mistakes do happen, but what happens when the mistake happens? Does the child stop being your child? Get to a space where they can look up to you in terms of whether we are doing good or doing bad. We know we can rely on dad and mom. I think being in that space is what is the most important. Not necessarily being your children's best friends, but being a space where they know I can run to this space when things go south. or I can run to this space when I'm at my highest, and they'll always be welcome.
Thank you so much.
Mm.
So you're talking about a safe space that your children should find a safe space in you. Cynthia, what
Correct.
are the words of advice would you give us?
Okay, for marital advice, I think one of the greatest things I was sharing it this weekend saying is that marriage is the only institution where you get the certificate before you have even done the practicum. And so you get the certificate. There's a lot of work that is going to be required for you to put into it. Put the work. Choose to work on yourself and choose to work on your marriage. The other thing when it comes to parenting, there's no experts in parenting. You learn on the job. It's an on the job training. So it's very important that you two sit down and write. Just like in marriage, you know you've got to sit down and have a strategic plan about what plans do you want to have as far as these human beings you've brought into the world. It is not keodudo. It is not que sera sera. You've got to actually plan. This is who we are bringing to this world, and this is what we would want to pray them into this. We want to expose them to this kind of art. We want to, so all this requires planning. Plan it and actually bring it into being, because once you do that, you become what we call intentional parents. There is an intent. And once you have intentionality, everything else we leave to God. Who they become after that, you expose them into the things they are supposed to become, then leave everything to God. Okay?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Donald and
Thank
Cynthia,
you.
for gracing us with your presence and your words of wisdom. We have
Yeah.
learned, I have learned a lot, and I know that our viewers have learned a lot. I just want to say thank you so much. I will put your contact information on this video,
Yes.
and anyone who wants to get in contact with you, whether in Kenya, Uganda, or wherever, all over the world, you have clients who are not just from Kenya, and they'll be able to get in touch with you. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank
and we'll
you.
see you next time. This was
Thank you.
Kavaya.
Thank you.
You're welcome.